Welcome to the ADHD Open Space Podcast. My name is Gray Miller, and I will be your host and facilitator as we explore ideas, workarounds, accommodations, and other aspects of being a professional adult with ADHD. Most of this will come from my perspective as a cis white male in his mid-50s, living in the Midwest, who found out a year ago that I've been living with ADHD my entire life. I am not an expert on ADHD, except maybe in not knowing I've had it for half a century and somehow still getting by. But I promise to cite my sources, or at least admit when I'm repeating something I read on the interwebs. If I say anything you don't agree with, you're welcome to call me on it and let me know. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. I'm back again. I realize that these are not yet in a regular kind of pattern, and I apologize for that. But look at it this way. When a new podcast does show up, look, free dopamine. I have 3 questions for you, my listeners, and these questions are in no particular order. The first one is, I have had a tendency to sort of repurpose some of the content that I have published in a written form on the Substack here in the podcast. And I realize there's a difference between having someone, read something and putting it on the podcast. I don't want to assume that people who listen to the podcast also read my Substack, but it's possible that you all do. And if that's the case, then having things you already read suddenly spoken again right afterwards is a little annoying. So first of all, I'd like to know if you would rather that the stuff on the podcast was either different than the things that are written down in the Substack, or if you'd rather that they were just commentary on them, or just completely different things that you would hear about. So you let me know what you'd like to hear, and that will be the first thing. The second thing that I would like to ask is, would you like to have more opportunities to kind of have a real-time thing, like either a live stream or maybe a Discord group chat or something like that, where we could all talk about the various things that come up in ADHD? I just basically checking out to see if anybody's interested in it. And if so, if you happen to say yes, then hey, do me a favor and let me know when's the best time that you could tune in to a live stream. And also, if you want, what platform. I don't think I can do live streams on Substack yet, but I have a YouTube channel. I have a Discord. There's lots of ways for me to do that. Heck, I could even do it on Facebook, although I'd really rather not. Last question. I have been contacted by a professional clinic that treats ADHD people, and they've offered to be a source for any medically related questions, which I really appreciate, because I have no credentials and I don't know, I couldn't tell a neuron from a proton. Okay, I probably could tell that, but anyway, I don't have the medical credentials. I always try and do the research I can. And, if I talk about medical things, I definitely profess my ignorance. But if there's something specific medically related or treatment related to ADHD that you would like me to explore, I have them asking to collaborate with me. So let me know what that might be, and I will pass it on to them and we'll put something together. And the best part about this is that if I hear nothing from anybody, well, that just means that I need to have more people on the podcast, or more people listening to the podcast before it really cares. And if you do bother to send me an email to Gray, Gray, at adhdopen.space, then I know you really care about it, because that's a lot to ask somebody to do during the day. So, since I haven't gotten any emails yet saying they don't like hearing this stuff, I'm going to go ahead and do part 2 of Grace and Discipline. You can listen to part 1 on the podcast page at adhdos.substack.com/podcast. Grace and Discipline Part 2, the deeper long-term effects of late diagnosed ADHD. If you know, you know. and that changes pretty much everything. Originally published in Humans with ADHD on medium.com, February 18th, 2024. Suddenly, so much of my life made so much more sense. That's the most common refrain that I hear from people like me who were late diagnosed with ADHD. In my case, it was an ongoing, bitter, semi-serious joke. Because while I excelled at tests, at writing and learning of all kinds, I somehow wasn't ever able to parlay that into a secure career the way my peers seemed to. I would ask myself over and over as I looked at my depleted bank account or sat in traffic on the way to another job that I used to love but now felt like sandpaper in my gut, if I'm so smart, why ain't I rich? Now, almost exactly a year ago from the time of this writing, I got the confirmation of a possible answer to that question. Because you've had ADHD, combined type, since you were a kid and nobody knew it. I can't blame anyone. Not my teachers, not my parents, not myself, not my well-meaning friends and partners who tried a variety of techniques to help me succeed. There wasn't the science to understand what ADHD was. In truth, there still isn't really, but it's getting better. So now that I know I have ADHD, what does it change about my life? Well, I have two quotes that I bring to this. First one is from author Robert Heinlein, who said, "Being ignorant is not a sin. Remaining ignorant is." And the second one is a quote from the movie The Untouchables. Sean Connery says to Kevin Costner, "What are you prepared to do?" That's a really bad Sean Connery imitation, but hey, you get what you pay for. It's better if you read it because then you'll hear him. Anyway, like my many late diagnosed ADHD folks, I channeled the one double-edged superpower that I did understand: hyperfocus. I devoured the books, the podcasts, the papers, the social posts, the videos, and I started writing about how I understood what I was learning. And now you're reading this article via a podcast. Sing with me. It's the circle of right. That was the easy part. The hard part was, and still is, that second part of the serenity prayer, accepting the things I cannot change. I have to stop pretending that my brain will work in the same way that most brains in this world work. It explains all the mishaps, mistakes, and poorly thought out decisions that have made my life more difficult than it needed to be, but it doesn't fix them. That is up to me. Discipline means limiting my options. And I hate writing that. I even hate more saying that. The cold, hard truth is that there are just some things that I see other people take for granted that I cannot do. I'm going to give you a short version of the running list, but before I do, I want to head off the typical neurotypical response. Oh, everybody has that happen sometimes. Yes, you are right. They do. The difference of ADHD is not in the symptoms, it is in the frequency and severity of the symptoms. Yes, everyone has diminished mental capacity when they don't get enough sleep. For someone with ADHD, trouble sleeping is more common, and the diminished mental capacity is more severe. Which is why it's at the top of the list of things that I cannot do. Number one, I cannot skip on sleep. There's an inverse relationship between how much sleep I get and how much my ADHD manifests during my day. And yes, I'm aware that sleep deprivation affects everyone. Please see the above about severity. To add a layer of complication, the quality of the sleep also seems to be a factor. Number two, skip on meds. It's not just taking them. It's the whole system of checks and reminders that I have to have in place because my brain does not form habits, nor can I just assume I'll remember to take them. Hence, the obnoxious and insistent medical alarm on my Apple Watch, the checkbox in my daily journal for meds, and carrying a spare dose with me everywhere in my ADHD everyday carry. And yes, I know I'm behind on writing that out. I will write that article and do that podcast soon. Number three, skip on exercise. Again, I know everybody needs to move more. However, for most people, it's because their body needs it. Mine too, but it's become more and more clear that it's really because my brain needs it to function adequately. Number 4, I can't buy things conveniently. I used to think that contactless payment ideas, the PayPals and Venmos and tap cards, were wonderful inventions, until I realized, decades too late, that they made it that much easier for my brain to create crises by making impulsive purchases. I have them, but I've made them harder to use for myself. And number 5, I cannot use phrases like in a while, soon, or later. Time agnosia is the thing. My perception of time just really doesn't exist in the way that it needs to function in this world. I've learned the hard way that I really have no concept of the passage of time, so if I use those very common phrases, they really have no meaning at all. Then there's a list of things that I have to do. I have to interrupt my life to make notes. I have to write things down, names, tasks, ideas, you name it, in my little field notebook, or they get lost. It's a common joke among ADHDers. The biggest lie we tell ourselves is, oh, I'll remember this later. And sure, there are things on my phone that can let me conveniently take notes, but the phone is no longer a phone, remember? It's an infernal distractibility sarlacc pit of new shiny squirrels. And the odds of me getting to write something down without being sidetracked are pretty slim. Number 2, I have to put things where I can see them. I love minimalism. I love the aesthetic. I love the idea. I love even the process of cleaning and decluttering, etc. But if there's something I need to remember to do, from yoga in the morning to remembering my keys to taking important papers to work, I need to have it in front of me, in my vision. This means that I need to have a certain other kind of minimalism. If you need to remember it, leave it out. Put everything else away, because it will distract you from remembering. I also have to have reminders of time everywhere. That's number 3. As I write this, I am wearing my Apple Watch. I have a small hand-carved clock on my shelf in my peripheral vision, a 2-foot diameter wall clock on my wall, and I set a timer via my HomePod so that I will stop writing in time to get ready to go out to dinner. And I'm still half worried that I'll be late. I'm lucky. Most of the time I don't have that ADHD trait of, I have an appointment later. I can't do anything until then. But I do have the reverse. I'll just write for a little bit and then get ready. Nope, I will get drawn into the writing or whatever in a lovely combination of hyperfocus and flow and keep telling myself, oh, just this one more thing, and then I'll be late, as I often have been throughout my life. Or worse, I will work right up until the last minute where if everything goes right, I might be able to be on time, and when I'm playing those odds, the house almost always wins. That is the house of ADHD, that is. Which brings me to the biggest discipline change of all since I got my diagnosis, the thing that, with the help of my partner, I've identified as the one factor that contributes the most to any problems I have during the day. I can't rush out of the house. I have to give myself time to prepare for wherever I'm going, or I will almost always forget something. Actually, I will adjust that to just saying always, because the times that I don't forget some important aspect of where I'm going are simply because that particular excursion didn't require as many things. It wasn't that I was prepared, I was lucky. Here's a short but not complete list of things I have forgotten. My power adapter for whatever device I might be bringing along, my meds, my wallet, my phone, my watch, my headphones, my keys, my teeth, yes, I have dentures, important papers needed for whatever appointment I'm heading to, my destination, yes, I have driven entirely across town to the wrong place before remembering where I was supposed to be going. Whichever of 3 or 4 engraved name tags for the board or organization that I'm supposed to be representing at the event that I'm going to, or my car. Literally, I have jumped on my bike and headed out before realizing that this was the time that I was supposed to take my car. Any of those items might also have been something that I forget when I'm leaving an event if I'm not careful. Now, I've been lucky to have an extended support network locally of friends and family who have helped me numerous times to replace or bring the truly necessary items to me. Other times, I just show up at the place and look less professional. If they know me, they might think it's a one-time thing, but if they know me well, Gray's just like that. Since my current profession, nonprofit fundraiser, requires making a good impression on people, it's not an ideal situation. But what we've noticed is that if I am rushing out of the house to try to be on time, I'm unprepared. My amygdala will merrily ride a white rabbit thrill of, I'm late, and put all the focus on where I'm going, often jumping ahead to what I'm going to be doing, and entirely ignore the getting ready side of things. Scaffolding helps, routines help, but ADHD is still there. So there is a checklist by the door. There's a nice little ADHD EDC, everyday carry kit, that I keep stocked with things I usually need, and if I remember it, then I remember most everything else. If my partner and I are leaving at the same time, we have a verbal ritual of stating and acknowledging that the door is locked. Just last week, my partner had to drop off my computer power adapter at the coffee shop where I was working prior to a meeting with the owner about a fundraiser. Luckily, it's only a little out of her way on to work, but I only felt mildly bad about asking her to do it. But if I think back to all the times that I felt shame or remorse about being an extra burden or letting people down by not being prepared, it's a whole lot of memories. That is why I call this a discipline. I suspect it's why I have always loved coats with many pockets and backpacks and such that advertise how wonderfully organized everything can be, because that's a fantasy I have of having everything I need exactly when I need it. Buying another backpack, though, is not going to fix my brain. I have exactly two options. I can either take the time to have all the stuff I need planned out in advance, or I can need less stuff. I'm still working on both, and in the meantime, I have a new game. Instead of try to get as much done in the time I have left, I try to get something completely done before the alarm goes off so I can actually have more time than I need to get ready. I don't want to be that person anymore who shows up just a little late and barely prepared. I want to become the person who always is earlier than expected, with exactly what is needed and maybe a little more. It's a work in progress. Discipline and grace. They are both the biggest changes since I got diagnosed. And thankfully, they can feed off and reinforce each other. It is about the practice, not the destination.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the ADHD Open Space Podcast. Again, my name is Gray Miller. If you have any comments or questions about the show, you can feel free to leave them on the podcast page at adhdos.substack.com/podcast, or you can email me directly, Gray, Gray, at adhdopen.space. The background music for the intro and outro are from pixabay.com and are called Funny Days Together by Background Music Lab, used under a YouTube Content ID license.